John Morgan here with Bob's Market and Greenhouses, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet at 4 p.m. each Friday. So let's get things started off today by taking a look at some announcements. So our first announcement today is that we now have 6-inch zinnia pots at our markets. 6-inch pot, it's about that big around, and they have a mixture of different colors of zinnias in them. And they're $2.99 each. And these things, they make great little planters. If you want to put them into a little pot. Awesome centerpieces. Go great on end tables out on your porch. Perfect plants for that. And also, I just want to remind you about our Yard of the Month contest. We already have a couple entries, and I stuck 2 of them up on here. But basically, each month we're going to be naming a Yard of the Month. And to enter the contest, it's really easy. All that you need to do is send a picture of your yard with your name and address, or it could be your neighbor's, and send it to ask@bobsmarket.com. That's kind of our general all-purpose email address. So if you send it there, I'll get it. I'll drop them all into a folder with the information attached, so that way we can keep them straight. And then at the end of the month, we'll pick out a winner. And now let's kind of change gears and take a look at the weather forecast. And let's start off with the weather forecast for our area, the Mid-Ohio Valley. So heading into this weekend, it's going to be getting pretty warm. We were kind of blessed earlier in the week with cooler temperatures, kind of unseasonably cool. And now it's starting to warm back up to temperatures that feel more like June. So 87 and 90 this weekend. But on the bright side, there's going to be very little chance of a thunderstorm this weekend. As we move on into next week, the temperatures are going to stay up in the 80s. And for the most part, we're going to have clouds and sun during the day. There is a chance of some thunderstorms, and a pretty good chance Monday night into Tuesday of there being more widespread storms. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. But for the most part, any rain that we see in the next week will be in the evenings or during the night. So heading on into Wednesday and Thursday next week, mid-80s right across the board. So now let's take a look at some national weather maps. And first off, let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're looking at pretty much all over the U.S., wall-to-wall sunshine. If you're down in Florida vacationing, there's a chance of some rain down there. And all along the southern coast, it looks like, a chance of thunderstorms. But for our area, in the Northeast and all up the East Coast, beautiful sunshiny weather. And because of that beautiful sunshiny weather, the danger for sunburn is up there. So if you're going to be outdoors this weekend, make sure you put on sunblock. And then moving on into Monday, you can see that our chance for thunderstorms increases. And there's a pretty good chance that we're going to have thunderstorms. They might be hit or miss, but you're definitely going to get one this coming week, Monday into Tuesday. And looking at Tuesday's rain forecast, now keep in mind this will probably mostly be at night as far as they're forecasting right now. But that's pretty much the area expecting rain. So let's take a look now at kind of my favorite part, the allergy forecast. And I've got some pretty good news this week. The allergy level on our scale from 1 to 12 has dropped down to 5, which I think is the first time since we've been doing this that's been below midway on the scale. And of course, the main pollen concerns right now are grass pollen and also chenopods. And you're going, what in the world are chenopods? Most people call them goosefoot, and it's a weed. It's actually in the same family as amaranthus. I'm trying to think of some other common names for it. Nothing's coming to mind, but you know, they're kind of taller weeds, and they get this little stalk on the top of them that has all these little flowers and pollen. And well, those are chenopods. So those are our two main pollen concerns right now. And if we take a look at the map, you can see that grass pollen, it's starting to drop off. It's still kind of in the mid-range in our area. But if you look out the Midwest, you know, the Mississippi River Valley, grass pollen levels have pretty much dropped off to nothing out there. And, you know, that trend's going to continue on toward us. And if we take a look at tree pollen, it's also pretty low. The trees have pretty much finished blooming for the season. So if those two types of pollen affect you, relief is definitely on the way, if not here. And so our main pollen concerns again are grass and tree pollen. Moving on. This week on our newsletter and in our blog, we were talking about caring for marigolds. So I went out earlier in the week and shot a video on caring for marigolds. So let's take a look at that. Hi, John Morgan here with Bob's Marketing Greenhouses. And in this week's video, we're going to take a look at caring for marigolds. There are two main species of marigold. Tagetes patula, the French marigold, you saw those in the last clip, and Tagetes erecta, the African marigold. Depending on the species, marigold foliage has a musky, pungent scent. It is said to deter some common insect pests as well as deer and rabbits. They are often used in companion plantings with tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes. Due to antibacterial compounds called thiophene that are produced by the roots, marigolds should not be planted near bean crops. Plant marigolds 6 to 9 inches apart for the French varieties and 18 inches apart for African varieties. Marigolds are one plant that doesn't require a lot of watering. Once they become established in your flower beds, you should only need to water them about once a week. Marigolds don't require too much fertilizer. Usually a time-release fertilizer is just enough for them. You also want to avoid fertilizers with a lot of nitrogen. Too much nitrogen will cause your marigolds to become bushy. It is important to deadhead marigolds by pinching off older and spent blooms. That will encourage branching in the plant and also promote more flowering. For this and other great information, visit us online at bobsmarket.com. And something that I mentioned in the video but didn't go into a lot of detail on is the fact that if you plant marigolds in your garden, you should avoid planting them near bean plants. And it has to do with a chemical that their roots produce called thiophenes. Basically, bean plants, anything in the legume family, has a bacteria that lives around the roots, and it forms a symbiotic relationship with the plants. So basically these bacteria produce nitrogen compounds, and then the plants use those. Well, if you plant the marigolds near the legumes, the thiophene will kill the bacteria, and that will harm your bean plants. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use marigolds in your garden to help deter pests. And of course, this information is in our newsletter, and the easiest way to get our newsletter is to text BOBS, B-O-B-S, to the number 22828. And it will reply back to you with instructions on how to register. And well, that pretty much finishes up our show for this week. And of course, you can join me back here on Fridays at 4 p.m. You can also tweet about the show using the hashtag BobsLive. And I keep an eye on that Twitter search so I can answer any questions. So I'll see you back next week here on Friday at 4 p.m. Have a great week.